Hi, I'm Josh. Today, I have with me Matei, who is the CTO and co-founder at Databricks. We are going to be talking about Omnigent. Matei, thank you so very much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Great to see you.
What exactly is Omnigent?
Yeah, so Omnigent is a layer for working with agents. We call it a meta harness because it's a layer above the individual agent softwares and the harnesses, which is basically the software to interact with an LLM. So, for example, Omnigent can run and manage coding agents like Claude Code and Codex and OpenCode. It can also run on top of custom agents you build with SDKs, such as OpenAI SDK. And what it does is basically these issues that come up above the level of a single agent. So, for example, composition of agents. How do I get a bunch of them to work together to do something? Collaboration, big part of it is the UI, which allows humans and agents of different kinds to collaborate. And then control, which includes security, cost control, and other things that you want to do in a common way across all your agents. And it's an open source project. It's something we built internally to help with coding agents, and we're also increasingly using for custom agents internally.
Why would I use something like Omnigent instead of using Cloud Code or Codex directly?
Yeah, so basically Omnigent can give you richer set of functionality on top of Cloud Code. So one of the things you can do with it is you can take Cloud Code, work with it, but then share your session with another person. Save it for later use, like let them clone it and run it themselves. So there's very rich kind of collaboration features on top. The other thing is you can easily switch to another provider. So nowadays, I think we actually did a survey. Many engineers are using multiple coding agents, especially because, there are all these sort of promotions and usage tiers and so on that you have from each one. So you want to try them. And the agents are also good at different things. And then the other piece is if you want richer sort of security controls and cost controls around your agent. So for example, one thing Omnigent can do is when you launch an agent, you can say, hey, run this, but tell it to ask me for every $10 it spends, pause it every time it hits 10, 20, 30, and just ask me if you want to continue. That's something that none of these individual ones do. But it's very useful as a developer. My experience is I get runaway costs sometimes when the agent decides to do something sort of stupid, like reading a giant log file or whatever. So this is what it does. What we found at Databricks is a lot of the engineers who are using agents heavily, they built their own UI and their own orchestration around them. And so they really found it useful to do the composition and to have nicer way of interacting with the agents. And then they got stuck on how do I invite others to collaborate on it? Because everyone has their own UI and their own model of doing it. Or how do I make it really secure? So this is what we tried to solve.
Is it just for coding, or is it meant to be an overall productivity tool around LLMs?
Yeah, we wanted to make sure it's awesome at coding initially, but people are using coding agents for many things. And we also support building custom agents. You can just write a YAML file with sort of the tools and skills and sort of sub agents and so on that you want for your agents. So I use it I basically talk to all my agents through this now. It's kind of nice to have a single app where I can do sort of the web research type tasks and coding and data analytics and so on. A lot of other folks are doing it the same way. We focused a lot on the human, interface of how do you manage lots of agents together and how do you share and collaborate with people. But it's also interesting for building custom agents. What we found internally, we ship all these agents like Genie and then some smaller ones for working on the product. And every team building those ended up building a YAML-based config language to specify their agent because they wanted to change the tools and the skills and so on all the time. And then every team ended up building a chat UI where they needed the same feature: history, sharing, permission, requests, artifacts that it can display, the ability to comment on them. So they were building a lot of common stuff. So Omnigent is also a good starting point to build custom agents and custom apps for that purpose. Yeah, we think it's really like, the way I think about it, like LLMs alone were sort of like maybe a little bit like the assembly language or like the processors for compute. Like they each have their own different formats sort of that they expect input in and different ways you call them. Then harnesses like OpenAI SDK or Claude SDK or whatever were kind of the software layer, the compiler that like makes them all look similar, right? So in your compiler, you don't worry about whether you're targeting an Intel processor or an ARM processor, but like Intel makes sure the compiler gives instructions in the right format for that, and ARM does it for their thing. And now that you have these, so like the harnesses are mainly about translating like your human intent into the type of format and the type of API calls that LLM is optimized for. But now above the harness, you have this like natural language interface. So anything you do with like composing agents or controlling them or exposing them to humans on top of that natural language interface is a common sort of problem you have across all the harnesses. So you can do it the same way for all of them. And what I found with this is it makes it super easy for me also to switch between agents or kick off multiple agents on a thing. Whenever I'm researching something, actually, I ask 2 or 3 agents to do web searches on their own, and then I ask them to compare. So just, generally can improve the results of a lot of things and can let me build my own workflows.
If I am an IT leader, what does Omnigent mean to me?
Yeah, one of the things it means is flexibility. As you build internal agents, you can easily swap between the latest models and harnesses, or you can even combine them into a big agent that does different things with sub-agents. I think for coding specifically, people are also really excited about the collaboration and the cost and security control. Like coding agents are very scary from governance sort of perspective, because you can spend a ton on them. They might just decide to like read a big file or something, and you spend like $1,000 by the time you're done. Also they're working with code, so they often might read stuff from the web or like install packages that might be compromised. They might push stuff into your repos. Engineers will want to connect them to production tools and like query the data and stuff. So very easy for things to go wrong. And since we focus on doing the security in a consistent way across any type of agent, you can set up those policies once. You have this open source, project where many people are contributing to improve them, to give you more policies, to give you sort of a library of security and cost tools to choose from, and then you can apply them to any of these. And even if your developers want to switch from Claude to Codex or to Copilot or whatever, they work in a uniform way.
Do you have to be a Databricks customer to take advantage of Omnigent?
No, you don't. We try to make it very easy to deploy on just common infrastructure that any developer has access to. So you can run it all with Docker and a database like Postgres. We made it really easy to deploy onto like Railway and some of these hosting platforms. Fly.io is another one. We also integrate like OpenRouter, Olama, like all these LLM providers. It supports like subscriptions you have to existing agents or API access. So we try to make it really easy to deploy anywhere. And the reason for it is we think the industry will benefit from having a common layer to do these things above the level of individual agents. It's hard for any one company to like keep up to date. Like, for example, how do we build integrations with all the like 50 plus coding agents that are out there and maintain them? Well, with an open source project, if they're all contributing, they can make sure those integrations are good. How do we make sure we have like the best, easiest to use security policies that understand like the latest MCP servers and so on, like say the latest API from Google Drive or something. Again, if it's open source, people can build those. It's kind of like with Apache Spark, because anyone can build connectors for it and anyone can build libraries on top. People benefit from that. Like Databricks doesn't have to build, say, a MongoDB connector. Maybe MongoDB builds it on their own, or like someone else does. And MongoDB doesn't have to build like a machine learning library because someone else contributed that and they can just like run it. So we think these problems above the level of a single agent are big enough that you need a layer there. And especially the security and governance ones, they're like deep problems. They'll keep evolving, because the attacks and threats and concerns will keep growing. So there's a lot of depth. So it makes sense, to do that together. And same with the connectivity and collaboration between lots of different agent types.
I know there is an open source version of Omnigent. And I know at Summit, I saw a little slide that had managed Omnigent. Can you tell us a little bit more about the differences and also where this all fits in relationship to even Genie agents and the Genie family of products from Databricks?
Yeah, good questions. Yeah. So yeah, the managed versus open source ones, the features are the same. Mainly we just run it for you. Like in Omnigent, there's this server. So you have to run a server somewhere if you want collaboration and central control of your agents. Then there's the individual, agents you're running. And that could just be on someone's laptop or you deployed it as an app somewhere or whatever. So the managed one is this hosted server. So you don't have to host your own. It already understands all the MCPs and stuff in Unity Catalog. It also, can get capacity through the AI gateway if you want to get LLM capacity through us or to manage it through the gateway. But it's basically the same server and the same UI and the same experience for users. The other piece we launched that's also exciting is what if I want to run an agent in a sandbox, like in a VM somewhere else that's just for that has restricted permissions. So we also announced sandboxes on Databricks, and much like apps, you can restrict sandboxes in terms of access to all the data and all the like tools and stuff that you registered in Databricks. So for example, I can say like launch an agent in this sandbox, and using the Unity catalog controls, I can say like, only let it access this catalog or whatever. So that's another feature. Again, we if you just want a very reliable place to host a lot of CPU VMs, we're also good at that because we have, we launch like millions of VMs, like every hour at this point, probably for all the data workloads that we do. But all the other things, the collaboration, UI, security policies, like cost management policies are open source, and we want to keep building them that way and benefit from like the community figuring this out, because no one knows like the very best way to say do intelligent routing for coding agents or whatever yet.
Now, what about
how it fits with?
Yeah, how it fits with Genie agents as a whole, and some of the overlapping things that Databricks has.
Yeah, so Omnigent, it's primarily for coding. You can also use it for like custom agents, like custom knowledge work agents. So it's really closer to sort of the agent brick space of like build your own agents, plus this coding one, which is really new. We didn't have anything for coding, but the combination of Omnigent plus the sandboxes can make us a pretty good platform for development. And internally, like we use these things for our engineers. Like most engineers work in a sandbox. Engineers were already using like the predecessor to Omnigent, which is our wrapper around like Claude Code and Codex and Cursor and so on. And then, now many of them are now using the new thing. It's sort of a new product line. So I think in terms of like end users, Genie Code, these are like integrated into the data analytics sort of interfaces. Like you can even go in a dashboard and ask Genie a question about like a specific data point on a chart. In terms of like, hey, I'm making a custom agent and I want a nice interface and hosting for it, or I want an environment to like share and collaboratively code on things with my team. That's what Omnigent does. And then the underlying technology, actually more and more of our agents are based on Omnigent also. So we hope to basically consolidate the stack in there. And then we benefit in all these, like, for example, the security policies and so on, they'll apply the same way to Genie and to coding agents and to custom agents once you write them.
There's a lot of conversations happening around open source models versus proprietary models. Where do you think there is parity between the two ends? And what advantages do you see from one over the other?
Yeah, I think, so definitely open source models have gotten a lot better recently, especially for coding, which is one of the biggest use cases of AI, probably one of the biggest, centers of AI spend overall. So really worth a look at. Now, it'll continue to be a race, and the private companies are well funded. They'll keep improving things, and I'm sure the open source ones will as well. So in practice, we actually have, some engineers that are trying and, mostly using open source models to see how they work. And we actually put out a blog post just recently where we built a benchmark of like internal tasks our engineers were doing, and like basically a pull request someone does, and tried to do them with different agents. And we found that GLM, for example, was up there, like basically in the same ballpark as Claude Opus and as GPT 5.5 and like the latest top tier models in terms of success rate on our tasks, So they're becoming very competitive. People are using them. I think stepping back though, like for sure with the fast moving space here, whether you're using agents or like building your own agent, you probably want flexibility to be able to move to the latest and best LLM when it comes out, or to use them for different things because they're better at different things. Actually, nowadays with post-training, before like models were, most of the compute was in pre-training and they're all trained on the same data on the internet, so they all sounded the same. But with post-training, actually, we're finding that they have very different skills. Like pretty much everyone thinks, Claude is better at front end and website design than GPT. On the other hand, like GPT, is quite good at debugging and reasoning. So you basically, as a user of these things, you want flexibility, and Omnigent is meant to make that really easy. So you can move your settings, actually move entire conversations from one to the other, share them with people. And if you're writing custom agents, it's just a YAML file, and you can change like a couple of lines in there to change the harness and run it on a different agent. And I think that's really important, even if people end up using mostly closed models and closed model providers, they'll want that flexibility to move between them that prevents lock-in and makes it better for them long term. And I think the open source models also obviously are very strong if you want to control exactly where they're served and hold on to the data or customize them. And I think they'll continue to play a role. We're seeing huge demand for them.
I know you have a demo for us today, but before that, I do want to introduce one of the brains behind Omnigent, Elise Gonzales, who is a staff product manager at Databricks. So thank you for also joining us today, Elise.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I think it's great to see where Omnigent is heading, and I know you've been one of the brains behind it, so awesome to have you here too. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and show us a demo today, Matei.
Yeah, I'll just show you a couple of the things that I do with it, and then the collaboration, which is one of my favorite features. Really, the whole team is using this to develop Omnigent and other things. And then I think Elise is going to also show us intelligent routing, which is one of the new things we're launching. So we're very excited about that. Let me
That's
just
probably
bring.
one of the features I'm the most excited about myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and part of that is based on, like, at least for us internally, we have lots of engineers. We care about lowering the cost. So a lot of it is based on measuring how different models do at different types of tasks. So I do recommend checking out the blog post on the benchmark. Actually, if you want, I can.
Yeah, I'll make sure to include a link in the description for that.
So it really it shows so, like there's quite, especially for like the simpler tasks, many models can do them, and even for the more complex tasks, actually there's a lot of choice, and the way you configure them matters. One of the cool things is the harness really matters. So this is one of the instances of Omnigent where I've been working. I'm doing a whole bunch of things here, and I just wanted to show like a few of the features. So if I make a new session, so first of all, there are a bunch of built-in agents. So I'll just show as an example. Debbie is an agent that we built that does multi-agent debate, and like anytime you ask it a question, it will actually kick off both GPT and Claude and ask them the same question and do something. So I don't know what I can ask it. Like, what are your two favorite teams in the World Cup? We can ask which one's more likely to win.
Let's see, Argentina and France. I was rooting for the US, but unfortunately that didn't go quite well. So.
Well, they got fairly far, but yeah. So I just ask it to do that. And once it starts, you'll see it's going to ask both of these guys. It's going to actually kick off some sub-agents.
So it is quite literally one prompt is having it perform that research, if you will, on multiple multiple models.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you can see here it launched Claude and GPT, and it's doing that. Now, one interesting thing here, these guys, I believe, these guys are just, I can go look at each of them individually. They just see whatever the main agent was asking them. So they each tell you their thing. This is the GPT one. It's running, it's going to say whatever, it's saying there. Is thinking about it. Yeah. And then when they finish, you'll see the main agent is going to go back here and say something and summarize the results. And you can ask it to do a multi-turn debate. I have these set to use like the biggest and slowest models by default. So it would be faster if I didn't do that, but you can see they're both doing. So it's telling me what they each said, why they agree. Okay, so they both think France is more likely, but not too much. GPT thinks it's the Americas venue. Claude doesn't weigh geometry, but emphasizes 48 team fatigue because it's larger. So whatever it is. So they have their own thoughts on this. And you can also ask them to do like a multi-turn debate and so on. So I use this a lot for like more sort of, useful things like designing something or like researching stuff on the web or whatever. I'll show another example. So another agent that's widely used, it's a multi-user agent that we launched, is Poly. So in Omnigent, you can launch the individual agent. Actually, I should show that first. So I can just launch, I'll just launch Cloud Code, for example. And I'll ask it, what is this project? Let me see if I can make it use. I'll make it use like Haiku to make it a bit faster. All right. So one of the things you can do is just launch an off-the-shelf coding agents like Claude Code, and you'll notice for these ones, because they have a terminal UI, we also show you the exact same terminal UI. This is just Claude Code. It did its own things. I can even type to it in the terminal. I can send it a question, and then when I go back to the chat view, notice it knows like what I sent it over there. It's just reading all its stuff. So that's nice for just running all your coding agents in one place, having this web UI. I can also share the session. Actually, maybe I'll show that with Elise, just so you can see how how that works. So I'll send Elise this link here, and you'll see she'll be able to log in, and she'll appear in this one. She logs in. So she'll be able to send it a message to and stuff. And even when I'm using just the one agent, I actually have, a lot of nice features. Like, for example, I can take any, see, there's Elise. She just sent a message. She just said hello.
Look
I
at
can
that.
take, yeah.
Which, by the way, this makes me think of a lot of like an office-like experience, like an office collaboration type experience, but for the AI generation.
Yeah, or let's say I'm doing code review, right? I work with this agent for many hours, then I send like a 2,000 line pull request. Now I ask the person to review it. Like, what are they going to do? They're going to kick off their agent and ask it what's going on in all that code. So why can't I just send them the same agent session? You can also fork a session, actually. I can take the same session. Like, let's say I'm working, let's say I actually want to work in Codex. I can just fork this session and work on it on my own. Imagine this is from Elise, and I can like kick off Codex and do some stuff. Okay.
Which would be extremely helpful. I can imagine in situations where you have a preference for, say, Claude is better at planning.
Yeah.
But to your point, you like the discernment, if you will, of ChatGPT better. You fork that conversation over and you bring it over easily instead of copy paste.
Yeah, or another one I do all the time is if I have a bug, well, these models have different biases in terms of what to search for, and I just want to find it as quickly as possible. So I just ask them both to find the bug. And it's just faster than waiting for one of them to sort of stumble on it. So yeah, anyway, this is, if I go back to the original one. So another thing I wanted to show is there's also like, obviously there's like a file editor and stuff, so I can see the stuff in my project. And there's also a commenting feature. Like for example, here I can say, hey, explain. So I can put a comment like that. And Elise could also add comments. So I don't know, Elise, if you want to go into this README, you can try adding a comment in there somewhere at the top. And then I can send them all to the agent to fix.
Just added another comment.
Okay, add more. Yeah, this is a good one. Yeah. And then I can just, I can review them. I can talk to Elise or whatever if I disagree. But let's say I like the comments, I can just say address all. And then they just go into the agent. So there's this very smooth collaboration flow. And by the way, all this even works on your phone. So I actually often use this on my phone. And that's partly why we built this interface with just the one button, because I don't want to type, a giant thing, copy paste a lot of text and make it do that.
For a long time we talked about human in the loop. This feels like humans in the loop type
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Yeah, multiple humans. And this also helps people like learn from each other, see what they're doing. And let's see, it's trying to edit it. Eventually it'll finish and we'll actually see them in there.
Yeah, I've actually talked to quite a few people who will have like Zoom sessions, Google Meet, where someone will share their screen, show the terminal, show them working with a coding agent. Someone else will be sort of talking them through it, adding ideas. We're just trying to, I think, make that flow much, much easier and more ingrained into the tooling rather than you having to do this a little bit more awkward kind of screen share.
Yeah, reminds me of that meme of this one person who wants to write an email, writes down the prompt, copies that email, sends it over to that, and then the business person reads the email, puts it back into ChatGPT, and reverses that prompt. So at least you're skipping that, and ultimately you're saying, hey, we're gonna have multiple people being able to share in that same conversation, shaping the output from the agents to really do whatever the business needs to in a more collaborative way, like one more opinion or researching agent, if you will, in the mix. So
yeah. And the final thing I'll show is like the multi-agent work. So one of the built-in agents here is called Poly. It can kick off like all the other coding agents and get them to do stuff. So as a simple task, I'll just get it to work in this repo. So maybe I can do something like that. This is a little silly, but we were just changing a bunch of stuff in there. So when it starts up, you'll see it's going to kick off a whole bunch of agents. And then I have lots of sections with like real, agents that are doing these things. I was working on a bunch of things here. So, I don't know exactly what all this stuff is, but we'll figure out what it is, right? So it's doing the diff now. That's the main agent doing it. Oh, I guess it's not looking at the new one, but okay, whatever. We'll have it do these ones. I should have told it to do new ones too, but I didn't do that. But you'll notice it's going to kick off an agent that'll appear here that is doing things. So that's going to review it and it's going to tell it back. And I can also, I can tell it. I can do something like this. I can just send it this message when that review finishes, ask Cloud Code to review its output too, and it will do that when the next one launches. So as an example of like more, more sort of realistic thing, I have this session here where I was creating another example. This is an automatic research agent that I'm calling Auto, which you can give it like some problem to optimize and it'll use LLMs to like try to, make code faster or whatever it is. So this one here, it launched like, 21 agents as I've been working with this over like, a week or so now. I told it to, reproduce some experiments that people did in some research papers. I told it to like review things, all that stuff. And this is in a work tree that I can see what files are changed in this work tree. It's going to be a lot of stuff because it has a lot of data files that it changed. So yeah. So anyway, if I go back to this guy, you'll see it's doing Codex is looking at the README, and then it'll run that one. Yeah. So the other thing that we're really excited about with here is the policies for cost and for security. You can set them in one place and they work across all the agents. And I think for that, maybe we can have Elise show you that real quick.
Yeah, and which is the big talk right now too. We went from Tokenmaxxing, token leaderboards, which honestly was always a dumb idea. I have lots of thoughts there, but long story short, now we're back to like, hey, we actually got to get ROI out of our spend. We actually got to run things like a business, and we want to be efficient with our spend. So those cost governance, which is what you're talking about there, Matei, and obviously Elise, I know you're going to talk about intelligent routing, which I think has to do with some of that cost governance aspect too, in a way.
Yeah, I think we're hearing that pretty prolifically across the industry now. Just like you said, I feel like there was this era of token maxing, but now it's really like, how do I become and use these tools most effectively and most efficiently? I think the other big boon there is really the open source models and how good they've gotten. And so being able to then assess which models are good at what, being able to switch between them, we're finding that that's going to be more and more common. So that's really what we're looking to build in here. So I will actually show you the managed version of Omnigent here. I'm just connected to my laptop and I'm going to use Poly. That's our multi-agent coding that Matei also just demoed for you. And then we have this little intelligent model router here. So I'm going to ask it to have both Claude Code and Codex come up with design proposals to have Slack and Teams integrations. It's something we've heard and also we use pretty often internally. And so it'll end up deciding which model to both have the poly harness itself use, and then also which models each of the design exploration should use. So you can see here it chose Sonnet for the coordination orchestration piece of this. And then once Poly spins up those two tasks, both Cloud Code and Codex, it'll also choose models for those sessions as well. So that way we'll start to be able to, task is a required property. I am doing this internally. Let me try this again. Oh, there we go. It recovered. Awesome. So we can see here, it actually chose Opus for the Slack and Cloud Code, and then it also chose GPT-5.5 Pro. You also get a little bit of an explanation in here of why it chose those particular models. And what we're really looking to do over time is provide flexibility so that you can tune this to your specific code base, to your specific types of tasks. We've done a lot of tuning, Matei mentioned this, but on our own internal repos and all of the work that our engineers have done. But each company is going to be different. Each repo's structure will be really different. So we want to make it tunable for everyone in here. So then I can actually jump in and see, it looks like we got Claude to launch. So we know that just like it said, it's chose Opus for this task. It's a pretty big design task here. But if I did choose something much smaller, it would be able to choose Sonnet, a smaller model, and be able to route the different agents differently as well.
What has been the outcome of leveraging something like this?
We're expecting to see is very similar to what the Coinbase article came out, I want to say a week or two ago, where they've seen their token numbers go up, but the costs go down. So as we start to be able to route between these models more effectively, I suspect we'll see more efficient usage of this. May not mean fewer tokens, but I think it'll be a lot lower cost. I think a lot of people, I've talked to a bunch of engineers, I know I'm guilty of this as well, where you just sort of pick a model, you pick the highest effort reasoning and you just kick it off from there. It's a lot of cognitive overload to try to decide model, effort, harness. And so we want to be able to take that sort of cognitive burden away from people, give them more intelligent routing here, but you can still choose which model you want to launch. So if you do know you want a specific model for a task, you'll have that option. But if you don't want to have to think about it, we want to be able to offer that for you.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of it is also just analyzing what's working on different things. There might be surprises. Like, for example, GLM turned out to be pretty good at like Rust and Scala, I think, which, we didn't think it may necessarily be good at that. Maybe it's not so good at front end, so you use Cloud for that. So there's part of this you discover only by trying it out. And then we also analyze like pull requests to see how many of them are like easy versus hard. And for all the easy ones, if you run the benchmark on them, like even the mini size models are doing pretty well. So we could do that automatically. And then there's also lots of automated things. Like, for example, do you do an automated review on each pull request for that one? Again, you can pick for that specific task what's best.
And Matei, I know you mentioned to me something about being able to set like per task limits or something along those lines.
You can actually see here how much we spend. So this was using Haiku. We didn't spend a lot of money, but there it is, 16 cents. If I want, I can add a policy on this. So admins can add policies, across everyone's agent, but I can also add them as a user. So there's actually this session cost budget. So for example, I can say, don't let the session spend more than $5 and then ask me every time it spends $1. I can also say just block expensive models on when you hit the budget, like let me continue with the rest. And then if I do this, as I ask it, as this number goes up here, eventually it will stop and ask me for permission to continue. So I found this super useful because, I want to kick off lots of agents and I don't know which one is going to do something weird, but they can just notify me if they're spending a lot. Very simple, very easy for me to then look and see if I want to let it do more.
Is it safe to say that that combining Omnigent and the AI gateway that Databricks offers, the goal is to basically be that one enterprise AI governance solution, just like Unity Catalog was around data, you are going now for being that enterprise AI governance solution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we think it's a new type of governance and type of like even financial sort of management you have to do in a company, and you need some tools for it. And I think having it close to where you manage data is also really cool because, what are you going to do to like improve your AI governance? Well, you need to analyze all the traces of what are people doing with it. So those are just a table in Databricks, and you need to like limit access to sensitive data sets. Well, those are the things that the catalog understands because of tags or whatever permissions on there. So that's the idea. We definitely found being data-driven helps.
Looking ahead, what's next for Omnigent?
Yeah, there's quite a bit on the horizon. I think this intelligent routing is one of the main things we're focusing on now, and really getting that into people's hands and getting feedback and making it customizable, supporting more models and more harnesses and more workflows, like more types of artifacts and UI elements like I showed you there. For example, we're working on just letting you collaborate on just HTML documents and leave comments on them and so on, which will open this up for like design use cases too. And then finally, like making it a great platform for custom agents. It's already, I think it's reasonable. Like the Polly and Debbie ones I showed you, they're just some YAML files that specify the behavior. But we want to we want to see what customers do with it and see if we can make things better there.
Well, thank you so very much for your time, Matei, as well as Elise. Always a pleasure having you, and look forward to doing another one with you.